Nobody warns you about the gap. Not your parents. Not your teachers. Not the motivational posters they hang in school hallways with eagles soaring over mountains. Nobody tells you about the specific, suffocating silence that exists between the life you imagined for yourself and the life you're actually living right now. You know the one. It lives in the quiet moments. The drive home from a job that pays you just enough to stay, but never enough to leave. The Sunday evening when the week hasn't started yet, but the dread already has. The moment you catch your reflection and think, is this it? Is this genuinely all there is? Marcus didn't have a reflection to catch. He had a rearview mirror. And every night for 9 months, that rearview mirror showed him the inside of a 2003 Honda Civic, his bedroom, his dining room, and his office, all wrapped in one parking lot in Phoenix, Arizona. He was 27 years old. He had $214 in a bank account he barely used. He had a box of granola bars in the back seat and a library card he'd memorized the number of because the Wi-Fi there was free. And he had something else. Something that nobody sleeping in a parking lot is supposed to have. He had a plan, not a dream, not a wish, not an affirmation he repeated to himself every morning while pretending things weren't as bad as they were. A plan, specific, written, brutal in its honesty about where he was, and surgical in its precision about where he was going. 10 years later, Marcus owns 3 companies. He employs 47 people. He made more in the last quarter than he would have made in a decade at the job he lost before the car became his home. But here's the thing, and this is the part they never tell you. The car wasn't the lowest point. The car was the beginning. And the gap between those two senses is exactly what this video is about. You are not behind. Let me say that again, slowly. You are not behind. There is no timeline. There is no schedule pinned to some cosmic bulletin board that says you should have achieved X by 25 and Y by 30. That schedule was invented by people who needed you to feel like you were running out of time so that you'd stop thinking and start buying courses, buying cars, buying the performance of success instead of building the reality of it. But something is wrong. You already know that. You don't need me to tell you that something isn't working because you feel it. You've felt it for longer than you'd like to admit. It's not laziness. It's not a lack of ambition. People who are lazy don't watch videos like this at whatever hour you're watching this. People without ambition don't lie awake running calculations in their heads about what it would actually take, to change everything. You have ambition. What you don't have yet is the architecture to hold it. And that's the real problem. Not your circumstances, not your past, not the city you grew up in, not the family that didn't hand you a blueprint, not the opportunities that seemed to knock on other people's doors. The real problem is structural. It's internal. It's a set of invisible frameworks you inherited without consent that are quietly governing every decision you make, every risk you avoid, every morning you trade for a feeling of safety that isn't really safety at all. Marcus had the same problem. Sitting in that parking lot, he thought his problem was money. He thought his problem was the layoff, the eviction, the series of events that read like a bad film. But the parking lot gave him time. 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours a night of enforced stillness. And in that stillness, he stopped blaming the story and started reading the author. The author was him. It had always been him. Not in the self-punishing way. Not in the way that says everything bad that happened to you is your fault. But in the way that says, the pattern that led here lives inside you. And the only place it can be dismantled is inside you. Here's what nobody is telling you about why people stay stuck. It's not fear of failure. Fear of failure is the surface diagnosis. It's what the self-help industry has been selling for 30 years because it's easy to understand and easier to monetize. Buy this course, conquer your fear of failure, go achieve great things. It's clean. It's linear. And it's almost entirely wrong. The deeper fear, the one that actually governs behavior, is the fear of becoming unrecognizable. Read that again. The fear of becoming unrecognizable. Think about it. If you radically change, if you build the company, make the money, shift the identity, you become someone your current circle no longer fully understands. Your family, who loves you, has a version of you stored in their minds. Your friends relate to you through a shared language of limitation. Your own sense of self is built on a story that's been running since you were a child. To change isn't just to grow. To change is to dissolve the person everyone, including you, has agreed that you are. That's terrifying. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Marcus talked about this. He said the months in the car, as brutal as they were, gave him something invaluable. They made the old version of him impossible to maintain. When you have nothing left to protect, you have nothing left to lose. The identity dissolution that most people fear across their whole lives happened to him in 9 forced months of stillness. The car didn't break him. The car broke the version of him that was keeping him small. And here's the psychological mechanism at work. Researchers call it identity-based paralysis. It's the phenomenon where people don't fail to change because they lack information or resources. They fail to change because the new behavior is incompatible with who they currently believe they are. You can't out-discipline a self-concept. You can't hustle your way past an identity that is fundamentally allergic to the life you say you want. This is why so many people read every book, watch every video, take every course, and still find themselves in the same place 12 months later. The strategy was right. The identity was wrong. Marcus called what he discovered the anchor and the sail. He wrote it on the inside cover of a notebook he bought for 99 cents from a gas station. He still has it. The metaphor is simple, but the implications run deep. Every person carries two forces. The anchor is the accumulated weight of who you've been, your habits, your self-perception, the stories your environment has told you about what people like you do and don't achieve. The anchor isn't evil. It's protective. It exists because consistency is survival. But an anchor that once kept you safe in shallow water will drag you to the bottom in the deep ocean. The sail is the force of intentional becoming, the deliberate construction of a new identity through new inputs, new environments, new decisions made in alignment with the person you are choosing to become rather than the person you have happened to be. Most people try to sail with the anchor still down. They want the movement without releasing the weight. They want the transformation without the dissolution. And the ocean doesn't negotiate. The work, the real work, is not addition. It is subtraction. It is the systematic identification and release of every anchor masquerading as security. Every belief that isn't yours. Every habit that belongs to a version of you that the situation no longer requires. Every relationship, every environment, every internal narrative that is structurally incompatible with the life you are building. You don't need more motivation. You need less anchor. Marcus developed what he called the 3-stage architecture. He ran it in the car. He runs it now, 10 years later, in every company he builds, in every person he mentors, in every quarter where something isn't working. The first stage is inventory, not goals, not vision boards, not the 5-year plan that makes you feel productive without requiring anything of you right now. Inventory. You sit down with brutal honesty, not the curated honesty you perform for other people, but the kind that makes you uncomfortable, and you write down the exact architecture of your current life. Not the life you're telling people you're building, the life you are actually living. Your first thought in the morning, your actual use of the last 90 evenings, the decisions you've been delaying and for how long, the beliefs you hold about money, about success, about whether people like you get to have things like that. Marcus spent his first 30 nights in the car doing nothing but inventory. He described it as auditing a company he'd been running unconsciously. You cannot fix what you cannot see. And most people cannot see it because they are too busy moving to stop and look. The second stage is signal architecture. Here, you deliberately, methodically rebuild the information environment that feeds your mind. Marcus started this at the library. For 3 hours every day, he consumed only material that was directly relevant to the person he was trying to become. Not general motivation, not feel-good content. Specific, applied knowledge in the exact domain he was building toward. He read 31 books in 7 months. Not because he was extraordinary, because he had stripped away every competing signal and replaced it with one frequency. What you consume is not passive. Every video, every conversation, every environment you spend time in is casting a vote for a version of you. The question is whether those votes are going to the candidate you've actually chosen or to the default candidate that was there before you showed up. The third stage is identity rehearsal. And this is the one that sounds strange until it works, and then you can never stop doing it. Every morning, before the day has claimed you, you spend 7 minutes inhabiting the person you are becoming as though you are already them. Not visualizing vaguely, not hoping abstractly. You make 3 specific decisions as that person. You make 3 specific statements as that person. You feel, for 7 minutes, the emotional state of someone who has already built what you are building. This isn't a delusion. The neuroscience is clear. The brain does not distinguish cleanly between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. The neural pathways carved by identity rehearsal are functionally identical to those carved by lived experience. You are not pretending. You are pre-building the circuitry of the person you are becoming, so that when the real moment arrives, you are not reaching for something foreign. You are reaching for something familiar. Here is how this runs in real life, not in theory. In the first week, you do nothing except inventory. You do not start a new habit. You do not make a new plan. You do not tell anyone you're changing. You watch. You document. You follow the thread of every decision you make back to the belief that generated it. You are an anthropologist studying a culture you've been living inside without ever examining. By the end of 7 days, you will know more about what is actually running your behavior than you have known in years. That knowledge is uncomfortable. It is also the most valuable thing you can acquire. In weeks 2 and 3, you run signal architecture. You identify the 3 primary inputs that have been shaping your thinking: the content you consume, the conversations you're having, the environment where you spend the majority of your waking hours, and you make one deliberate substitution in each. Not an overhaul, not a dramatic life restructure. One substitution per input. Precision over intensity. A surgeon does not fix a heart with enthusiasm. They fix it with precision. From week 4 onward, you run identity rehearsal every morning for 7 minutes before anything else. Before your phone, before the news, before the world has told you who you are today. You hold the frequency of the person you are becoming. Make 3 decisions as them. And then, and this is critical, you find one moment in the real day to act from that identity rather than your current one. One moment, not a transformation, a data point, a vote. Over 90 days, those data points accumulate into evidence. And evidence is what the brain uses to update belief. You are not motivating yourself. You are running an experiment with a sample size of 1, and the results are your life. At some point in the process, and you will know it when it happens because it doesn't feel like what you expected, you will stop becoming and start being. It won't announce itself. There's no moment where the lights change and the music swells. It's subtler than that. It's the morning you wake up and the first thought isn't dread. It's the conversation where you disagree with someone who used to make you shrink. It's the decision you make automatically, without agonizing, that 6 months ago would have taken you a week to make wrong. That's the identity shift. not the achievement, not the company or the money or the milestone. The shift in the person making the decisions. Marcus says the first company he built taught him about business. The second taught him about people. The third taught him about himself. And the thing he learned about himself, the thing he wishes someone had told him in that parking lot, is that the version of him sitting in the car was not a failure waiting to be fixed. He was a foundation waiting to be built upon. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not the sum of the things that haven't worked yet. You are the sum of the decisions you make starting from this moment, compounded daily, in the direction of the person you are deliberately choosing to become. Here is what I want you to do in the next 24 hours. Not someday. Not when you feel ready, because ready is not a feeling that arrives. It's a decision you make in its absence. Tonight, spend 30 minutes on inventory. Write down the 3 beliefs about yourself and your potential that you have been carrying the longest. Not the ones you tell people. The ones that run underneath every conversation, every plan, every moment of almost. Write them down. Look at them. Ask one question. Whose voice do I actually hear when I think these thoughts? Because most of the beliefs limiting you right now don't belong to you. They are inherited architecture. An inherited architecture can be demolished. Then write down one decision, one specific, concrete decision, that the person you are becoming would make differently than the person you have been. Not a habit, not a goal, a decision. Make it tomorrow. Not perfectly, not completely, just once. Because transformation is not a feeling. It is not an insight. It is not a video you watch or a book you read or a framework you find compelling. Transformation is a decision made in the present tense, in the body, in the real world, one moment at a time. Marcus made his first decision in a parking lot with $214 in his account and granola bar crumbs on the passenger seat. He decided to stop waiting for the circumstances to change and to start changing the only thing he actually had jurisdiction over, himself. That decision, compounded daily across 3,650 days, became 3 companies and 47 lives employed, and a man who can look in a mirror, a real one, not a rear view, and recognize exactly who is looking back. The gap is not the enemy. The gap is the invitation. It is the space where you get to decide, with full awareness and full agency, what kind of person you are going to be. Not the person shaped by default. Not the person assembled by circumstance. Not the person running on inherited code from environments that were never designed with your potential in mind. The person you choose. On purpose. Starting now. Marcus was sleeping in a car. You are watching this. And somewhere in the distance between those 2 senses is a version of you that is 10 years from now looking back at this exact moment. This specific evening, this particular decision to either close the tab or carry something forward. They are either grateful or they are grieving. They cannot tell you which one it will be. Only you can write that. The anchor is heavy. The sail is waiting. And the ocean, as always, is enormous and indifferent and completely, perfectly navigable for anyone willing to release what is holding them to the floor. Release it.